Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're going to kick off our career panel for OSMGeoWeek, which is, I think this is our 6th year hosting events around geographic education week specific about OSM. Today we're going to have an hour of presentations followed by 15 minutes for a Q&A. Then we're going to take a short break and do the same thing again for the second half of our panel. For those of you who are joining just now, just a quick reminder that we're going to be recording today. So if you'd like to either, change your name in the attendee list or turn off your camera, now's the time to do that. Today we'll be having some time for questions. So if you have any questions, please type those into the chat and we'll take a collection of those and ask them at the Q&A time. If you need any help with Zoom or anything like that, please feel free to chat me. I'll be your MC today. I'm Rachel Levine from the American Red Cross, and I'm going to pass it over to Tom, who's going to introduce our moderator.
Good day, everybody. Happy Geography Awareness Week and GIS Day. Glad for you to join us. My name is Tom Gerton. I'll be one of your co-hosts and joined here by my 2 plants. And if you like this event, make sure to check out other great events at osmgeoweek.org. And without further ado, I will introduce our moderator for this panel, Dr. Lee Schwartz, the Geographer of the United States, and the Director of the Office of the Geographer at the U.S. State Department.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's joined today's virtual panel on careers in geography, and to follow up from Rachel and Tom in wishing everybody a very happy GIS Day, which each year falls on the Wednesday of the annual United States Geography Awareness Week, which is the 3rd week of November. This is the middle of 3 consecutive sessions that will focus on careers in geography. I believe there was a Francophone panel that was held during the previous hour, and I will be moderating this middle panel that focuses on careers in the government and NGOs. The following panel will feature speakers who discuss jobs in the private sector. And might I add that it's so nice to see the government and NGOs getting along so well, which during my career has not always been the norm in many sectors, with the notable exception, I think, of the recognition of the importance to document and share geospatial information. I'd like to thank the American Red Cross, USAID, and the MapGive initiative in my office at the Department of State for organizing these panels as part of Geography Awareness Week, OSMGeoWeek, and GIS Day activities. And if I can use the prerogative as moderator, I'd also like to take a brief minute to offer a plug for the work of my office in creating and leading the Department of State's MapGive initiative that aims to encourage and increase participation in the global mapping community and facilitate the creation of open geographic digital data to support humanitarian relief and development programs. I encourage you to find out more about the program and how you can participate at mapgive.state.gov. Before I introduce the panelists, a few brief words about the structure of today's event. We have 5 speakers with 10 minutes allotted to each, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. I will be holding the speakers to a strict 10-minute limit. I don't know if anybody's running. And they should feel free to use less than their allotted time in order to give more time for potential questions related to the structure of their organizations or how their organizations make use of GIS data, job internship opportunities, and so forth. Unfortunately, I have another event I need to speak at starting at 2 p.m. So at that time, I'll turn the moderating role for the question and answer session over to Tom Gerton from my office's Humanitarian Information Unit. I will be providing brief biographical information about our speakers prior to their turns. In order, our speakers are from the U.S. Department of State, Laura Cline; from USAID, Mikel Crino; from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, Geoffrey Kateregga, and from the World Bank, Ben Stewart; and from PEPFAR, we have Ed Vallejo. First up is Laura Cline, who is a geographer with the Department of State in the Office of the Geographer and Global Issues in the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. She joined the office in 2018 as an analyst in the Humanitarian Information Unit, and she manages special programs, the newest of which is the Cities COVID Mitigation Mapping Program, which is a field-based initiative to understand COVID second-order impacts through mapping and analysis of the human geography of cities around the world. Prior to joining the State Department, Laura applied her geospatial expertise at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, where she began her career with US government in 2006. Laura received her BA in International Affairs and her Master's in Geography from the George Washington University, with her graduate research focused on natural resource conflict in Africa, disaster response and mitigation, and urban climatology. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Lee. Hello, everyone. Allow me to chime in and wish everybody a happy GIS Day and happy GeoWeek as well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today a little bit about career as a geographer at the US State Department, although you just heard from the geographer at the US State Department. But I've had a great opportunity working as part of Lee's team and working with our Humanitarian Information Unit and particularly the MapGive group. I think Tom's going to pull up some slides for me, and then briefly we'll jump right into it. And so we can go straight to the outline. Just wanted to give you a short, how did I get here? You heard a little bit about the bio piece of it. Speak about what our Humanitarian Information Unit does, how you can find out more, and what you might be interested in learning about. And then talking about how we're promoting geographic approaches as part of the mission of the geographer at the Department of State. So next slide. Mentioned it already, but international affairs and geography background. Spent a good amount of time with remote sensing and GIS tools and applying those to environmental issues. My experience was, a mishmash of internships and small contracting positions here and there before I joined the government. But really just wanted to emphasize that if you are getting started in your career in geography or interested in a career in geography, don't overlook all those experiences that you have as an intern or for research projects that you may be supporting a professor. There are certainly a lot of skills I still refer to from those days. What really I feel like got me to the point where I am now is that I spent a lot of time focusing on building up my experience in research and analysis, writing and communicating, speaking as well, getting over any nerves of public speaking, but spending plenty of time trying to get practice in on that type of activity, and even customer support. I started learning that way back in some of my first jobs in high school even, or in college, and consider that as part of your experience and things that you might include in your resume as you go forward for professional jobs, because I still do customer support and have throughout my career with the federal government and as a geographer. So there's still a lot of applicability to the skills that you might pick up in a widely varied set of experiences. There's a couple thoughts on careers. Jumping into HIU, next slide. What we do is we pull together lots of different resources. We pull from resources we have within the US government and pull from resources that we find outside government, pulling everything together, creating assessments, and then really importantly, it doesn't matter if it's in your head, but you've got to be able to communicate it well and clearly and in a means that most resonates with our policymakers and our decision makers. Also, we have the great opportunity to create both written and visual products that we can share not only with the US government and policymakers, but also with our humanitarian partners. And so that's really been a great benefit and way in which we've incorporated open data as well as commercial data and other resources to really tell the story of some of these complex humanitarian situations. We, of course, seek to continuously grow and expand the sort of geographic methods and tools that we're using. We also, as part of the department, have the great opportunity to promote geographic approaches and to work with partners around the world. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. Next slide. Moving right into what we do at the Humanitarian Information Unit. We are trying to provide policymakers and the humanitarian community more broadly with both the context as well as oftentimes some trends to a humanitarian situation. We know that there are certainly a number of humanitarian situations around the world. We have a whole team that we are always constantly looking at different regions and different topics, but it's not enough to say how many people have been affected in one area or not. It really helps if we can put that in some sort of context. So how we do that as geographers is by combining many different data sources and many different ways of visually telling this story, which is why you see here not only our maps, which of course we're geographers, we want to include some maps in there, but we do want to also include bar charts and graphs. We also have some text that we include on our graphics to tell a short and clear story that we really have to work to squeeze into one page, but to tell the story and to raise awareness for our policymakers and to create a product that we can share publicly on our hiu.state.gov website, but that allows us to showcase what the US government is looking at in these humanitarian situations. So next slide. Then moving right along, I get to be part of the MapGive initiative. It's, if you hit the button one more time, Tom, there's a couple other things. It is an initiative that started at the US Department of State. It grew out of 15 years of some of these outreach and partnership opportunities that the HIU was able to create in sharing data and sharing commercial imagery. And we really turned it into programs where we can share satellite imagery for OSM mapping. So that's our imagery to the crowd, or ITSI. And then also we have a number of public diplomacy and outreach and geospatial capacity building activities that we support, with all with the goal to support the creation of open data, to support the expanded and enhancing geospatial capacity at local levels around the world. So if Tom goes to the next slide, I can show you briefly one of the examples. This is northern Uganda. We were asked, there were nearly 1 million people moved into an area of northern Uganda here as they were fleeing from South Sudan a few years ago. Yet this was the imagery that was available on OpenStreetMap at the time. So if Tom goes to the next. We looked at the updated imagery that we had available and that we were able to share. And we saw this, we saw roads, we saw buildings. This definitely did not look like an uninhabited part of Uganda any longer. And this was the picture that aid workers needed to see and really needed to understand. And if Tom goes to the next slide. And this is part of the reason why the whole MapGive initiative started, is because we knew that we could help bring resources to bear. We could help motivate and share and work together with the volunteer geographic community, the remote participatory mappers around the world who can help incorporate new data and build roads and building layers into OpenStreetMap and provide this much clearer and much richer data set for humanitarian aid workers to be able to understand how many supplies they need to bring in, where they need to go, where perhaps staging points or other good locations would be. So really, we've had a great opportunity to share and promote this sort of activity. Next slide. And in fact, we've been doing this since about 2012, 2014. And here are over 225 places where we've been able to share commercial imagery in support of OpenStreetMap and building the roads and building data that really makes a difference for humanitarian and development activities. So we are not the only one by any means who are in this space at this point in time, but it continues to be our mission to be a part of this community and to be able to promote this open data creation as much as we can, because it really has tremendous benefit to humanity. We focus on humanitarian and development, but in so many other ways that we don't even think about, that there's new data in OpenStreetMap, and folks can use it in many different ways and many different applications to really improve and understand what's going on and improve from that point. Next slide too.
FYI, you have about 1 minute left.
Okay, thanks. So briefly, the way we encourage other mappers is we go through mapathons. We also work with local mappers, our Secondary Cities initiative, secondarycities.state.gov. If you'd like to learn more, we've done geospatial capacity building and open data creation at the local level. Next slide. We are promoting this participatory mapping model on MapGive. And as we're creating this new cities COVID mitigation mapping program, we will have lots more content coming up on our mapgive.state.gov website. And if you are interested in being a part of the department, not only can you participate in MapGive activities anytime you'd like, but also state has internships and virtual student foreign service opportunities available too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. And our next speaker is Mikel Crino from USAID. Mikel has worked for more than 20 years in GIS and urban planning. And as the Deputy Director for the USAID GeoCenter, he manages all aspects of that organization's operations. Prior to joining USAID, Mikel managed geospatial activities across several federal and state government programs. And while working full-time with the GeoCenter, Mikel also serves as an officer in the US Navy Reserve. Mikel holds an MS in Geography and Environmental Planning from Towson University. I can say personally that I've enjoyed working with Mikel and his team over the years, so I will turn it over to him. Mikel.
Thanks, Lee. While I'm sharing my screen here, getting set up, see here, share that. All right, I think I'm all set. Tom, you're able to see that?
Yes, it looks great.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and just following Laura, who we've had a chance to work with both at Department of State and when she was at NGA. So it's good to see some folks, and really a plug to HIU. When our team got started some years ago, there were a number of folks from HIU that we coordinated regularly with, and were extremely supportive as we started the GeoCenter. Let me just scroll through some slides here. So I'm Mikel Crino. I'm here representing USAID as the Deputy Director of its GeoCenter. I'm actually employed through the Foreign Agricultural Service, though, and placed in USAID through an interagency agreement. Before jumping into the work of the GeoCenter, I'll share some background information on USAID. USAID leads international development and humanitarian efforts for the US government. Started by President Kennedy in 1961, the agency has programs in more than 100 countries around the world to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Our programming is based on fostering stable, resilient, and prosperous countries that are more resilient. The agency covers a range of sectors that implement local programs to achieve development outcomes. As an audience familiar with geographic data, you can see how programs designed for improved health, food security, education, and other sectoral outcomes benefit from good local data, often in places with fewer options for formal mapping and data creation activities. This is where spatial data and increasingly open geographic data is supporting the work of USAID. A little bit about the GeoCenter. At the GeoCenter, I'm part of a team of geographers and international development practitioners that apply geographic approaches to the planning, implementation, and evaluation of our work. Through geographic approaches, we help USAID best connect our activities to where they will have the greatest benefit. International development projects are inherently geographic, factoring the human and physical components of geography with their location. Our team was established in 2011, and we are now a wonderful group of 15 people focused on providing geospatial services to our agency's development and humanitarian assistance programs. Our core services include, as you'd expect, geographic analysis and mapping. On any given year, we can receive upwards of more than 100 requests for analysis, maps, and visualizations. So that gets to Laura's point about customer service always being an important factor. Capacity building. The agency is becoming more data-driven, and this includes 30 GIS specialists spread around the world at USAID missions. Just this morning, we hosted 60 staff of the agency's GIS community of practice to virtually join our annual workshop. There is now a strong network of technical staff regularly applying geographic approaches as part of how USAID plans and executes its programs. Remote sensing. Started as a program to deliver high-res imagery through an interagency license, it's now growing to test newer tools and sensors like Earth Engine and synthetic aperture radar, as well as help the agency navigate options for the many excellent public and private remote sensing services that are available. The next generation of digital mappers, or youth mappers. This is the program probably most familiar to the open mapping community. I'll talk more about that one in a second on the next slide. Geographic standards. This is probably the least interesting to talk about, but has the most potential to make a difference for us. We're seeing interest in strengthening how USAID maps both the location of its programs overseas and maps the impact of these locations that they have on the countries we're working in. COVID has alerted us once again to capturing, where possible, our work at the most granular level possible. This will drive the next round of our policy updates that we are just beginning to undertake. While the GeoCenter is a hub for geospatial at USAID, there are other programs like the Famine Early Warning System and Severe that have deep sectoral expertise and immerse themselves in geospatial data and technology. So I'm representing the GeoCenter, but I don't want to give the impression that we're the only unit within the agency providing geospatial services for the agency itself. Let me switch over to youth mappers. Some of you may already be familiar with the program, and there may be even some youth mappers on the call today. This program focuses on building both the map and the mapper. The network of student chapters is at 223, and many of them are finding novel ways to support their own communities through mapping, including power transmission in 40 villages in Sierra Leone, core infrastructure edits in support of the Rohingya humanitarian situation in Bangladesh, and COVID-19 related hotspot mapping along the border entry points in Uganda, as well as updating health facility data more broadly. There is an extensive blog series on youthmappers.org where you can see how students bring their technical, academic, and professional development expertise together. Just last week, we announced Everywhere She Maps, a new activity within Youth Mappers that will focus on mapping campaigns and professional development opportunities toward women's economic empowerment and prosperity. Everywhere She Maps will support 3 main programs, including a leadership fellowship for women in technology, an expanded regional ambassadors program for local capacity building, and mapping and geospatial data creation that can draw attention to and strengthen women's social and economic opportunities. I think I did this in reverse order as Laura. I do want to switch over to some of the career development side. Since this is a career panel, I wanted to spend a little time on how people may establish or further their own careers in international development. First, I'm a geographer by education and profession. While there were GIS classes when I was an undergrad, which I took, there was also a pen and ink cartography class. I was the last class to get that opportunity before everything turned digital. I've mostly been involved in the geography profession for my career, split between private sector and government jobs, covering urban planning, environmental planning, engineering, and the last 10 years, I've been very fortunate to apply geography for international development and national security. I'm also, as Lee said, a military reservist, which has opened up so many opportunities and still does for me. I'll quickly cover some potential opportunities for working at USAID. Go for the foreign service or the civil service if that's your interest, but please know it's a long process. Don't wait for it to work in your favor. Simultaneously pursue other options, particularly through the implementing partner side. For those that don't know, USAID relies heavily on the implementing partner side to do its work. Our own team at the GeoCenter is mostly from a support contract. There are dozens and dozens of private companies, not-for-profits, religious organizations, and universities implementing USAID's work and development more broadly. We're not the NGA or NASA or USGS, where geospatial is at the core of their organizations. So approach USAID more broadly and do your best to connect GIS, data science to the work that we do, which is international development and humanitarian assistance. You'll see many more opportunities that way. Some good news and bad news on the internship program. On the bad news, it's super competitive. They actually only released the internship, the formal pathway internship program for about a day or two on USA Jobs. But if you have some advanced planning, you're a younger college student, you can plan for those in your junior and senior years. Please know that that's available to you. There are many fellowship opportunities within the agency. In the years that I've been with the GeoCenter, we've always had fellows, PMF fellows, AAAS, which is the Scientific Fellowship Program, Payne Fellows, Jefferson Fellows. They always form a core part of our team. But again, I want to emphasize the implementing partner community as well. They always have a need. Pardon me 1 second. Postpone that. They always have a need for interns, and again, a little bit of planning ahead. That is probably the
FYI, Michael, you have 1 minute.
Actually, that was the last item I had, so I think I'll give my minute back.
Thank you, Michael. Always nice to get time back. Our next speaker is Geoffrey Kateregga from the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. Geoffrey currently serves as the Community Programs Manager based out of the Hot Uganda office. Geoffrey's been involved in the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team since 2015, working on projects in a variety of different countries, including Ramane Huria in Tanzania, financial inclusion and refugee mapping in Uganda, Legit in Liberia. Geoffrey is an active member of the OpenStreetMap Africa community that organizes the annual State of the Map Africa meeting and works to increase collaboration in order to build a more robust digital map of Africa. Over to you, Geoffrey.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy GIS Day, everyone. My name is Geoffrey Kateregga, and I work with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team as the Community Programs Manager. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about HOT and also about career opportunities at HOT. Yeah, so my background is actually in information technology, but I think through open mapping, I ventured my way into GIS and mapping. So I discovered about OpenStreetMap around 2012, and I joined the local mapping community in Uganda. But later on, HOT was hiring for a project in Tanzania, and that's when I joined HOT as a staff member. So I was mostly inspired by the use of open source tools to contribute open data and the sense of community that comes around contributing to OpenStreetMap. So yeah, HOT is an international team that is dedicated to humanitarian action and community development through open mapping. So we do a lot of disaster response, disaster preparedness mapping projects, but also do have like several country projects that are specific to particular data needs for our development and humanitarian partners. So currently my role includes coordinating with the community working group. We do run community webinars. We actually have one on Friday that you can join, where we shall be sharing about the COVID response that we have done as HOT with the through the rapid response micro grants. I also lead trainings on our tools for community members, and also help on designing and developing our micro grant program, where we support communities to do their own designed and led projects around OpenStreetMap. I also contribute our disaster response efforts through mobilizing the community to contribute to those projects. Specifically on the COVID response, we have we have activated in 33 countries, and some of these projects are HOT-led, others are community-led, but also we do have the microgrant program, which has supported our community to respond to local needs through mapping and responding to the COVID situation in the different countries. So in 2019, HOT developed a strategic plan in which we envision a world where everyone is counted, where map data is accessible and used in decision making that can save lives and improve lives. And also a world where everyone can engage and contribute to the map. And yeah, this year, the Audacious project was announced. And this is a very big and ambitious project. It's a 5-year project. And our support to local mapping communities is going to be decentralized and localized into a hub structure. So we're going to be having 4 regional hubs, and we'll support communities to develop local partnerships and to use open data and open mapping tools to solve local problems. So our audacious vision is to map an area that is home to 1 billion people, especially in areas with poverty and high risk of disaster. And we plan to do this by engaging 5 times more mappers to grow local edits and contribute to the map. So specifically, we are doing this by setting up regional hubs in South Asia, in East Africa, in West Africa, and Latin America. And these are going to be serving communities in 94 countries. And we are investing in technologies that enhance mapping contributions, especially on mobile, so that we can increase more local contributions to the map. We're also investing in map data quality and also ethical collection and use of map data. And more importantly, working with humanitarian organizations, governments, and other actors to help them to deliver more effective and efficient aid. We are also working more closely with the OSM community and the OSM Foundation to support the community and the core systems and software. Yeah, so through the work with Audacious, my role is changing into the community manager. I'll be the community manager for the East Africa Hub, and I'll be supporting the growth and capacity of mapping communities in 21 countries through trainings and grant funding, and also developing regional partnerships and data use by NGOs and governments. And monitoring map data quality and also completeness of the map. Yeah, so because of this audacious project and the 4 regional hubs that we are going to be opening up, that are going to be serving these 94 different countries, it has opened up different doors in terms of opportunities, job opportunities at HOT, and I would like to mention a few that are currently open and are hiring. Yeah, so currently hiring for the data lead, project manager, regional hub directors, and senior project managers. And with time, more positions are going to be opening up as the hubs do open. So yeah, I would like to encourage everyone who is interested to working with HOT to check out our website in the jobs section for those opportunities that will be opening up. But we do also have internship opportunities. We do have a data quality internship that runs twice for 3 months every year. This year we worked with 150 people during the data quality internship, and yeah, we train them on different tools, but also they help us to contribute to improving the data quality on OpenStreetMap. Yes, as I finalize, I just want to just share some of experiences learned from my career journey on how you can prepare your career path, especially if you want to venture into GIS and mapping. So consider volunteering and internships. I think from my own story, I started out by contributing to OpenStreetMap and HOT as a volunteer, but yeah, with time, then I was able to join HOT But most importantly, through these internships and volunteer, you get skills and also grow your network. The other important thing is that technology is changing very quickly, so you have to keep on learning. Don't just stick on what you learned at school. Always try to know what the hot topics and issues are. Attend conferences, online webinars, blogs. There's a lot of like open, free content on YouTube that you can always learn from. Yeah, interact and network. Join a mapping community or a meetup of people in the GIS profession. And if you find there's no like local meetup or community, you can even start it up yourself. So don't say there is nothing in my city. Yeah, you can start it yourself and inspire others to join mapping and also develop their skills. So yeah, I'll end it here and hand it over back to you. But yeah, if you want to have any questions around the any job opportunities at home, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly if you want to discuss more about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Geoffrey. Our next speaker is Ben Stewart. Ben is a senior geographer leading the geospatial team in the Development Economics Department at the World Bank. His work has focused on introducing novel geospatial analytical techniques to World Bank group operations, with special focus on market access, network analysis, and remote sensing. Prior to joining the World Bank Group in 2012, Ben engaged in a number of different endeavors, including conducting research focused on interpreting the effects of the anthropogenic disturbance of grizzly bear habitat as a grad student, and then developing and designing GIS applications for ESRI. Ben holds a Bachelor of Science degree in biology and two Bachelor of Science degrees, one in biology and one in the history of science from the University of King's College in Halifax, Nova Scotia, an advanced diploma in GIS from the Center of Geographic Sciences in Lawrencetown, Nova Scotia, and a master's in geography from the University of Victoria, British Columbia. All of those institutions of higher learning are in Canada, by the way, for those of you who may be less geographically aware. Thank you, and over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here and great to be invited. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. I want to talk a little bit about my background and how I came to be a geographer at the World Bank. So I did my undergraduate in biology and history, as was mentioned, at the University of King's College in Halifax. When I was going into my senior year, my mom actually did a sabbatical to study GIS at the community college in Nova Scotia. And I remember coming home from school and she had all these giant maps, and I thought, that sounds kind of interesting. Maybe I could do that. So I then went to the Nova Scotia Community College. They have an 8-month graduate program in GIS, and that's where I learned everything I currently know about GIS. Learned the specifics of the software, learned all about geography, learned to be a computer programmer, learned Python, Visual Basic, the ESRI.NET Studio. And I really fell into it, and I loved it. It was something that I obviously taken quite a shine to. I moved from there to Ottawa, worked with the federal team at ESRI, developing custom solutions for various people who would be willing to pay for custom solutions. Did that for about a year and a half before moving on to Victoria, studying grizzly bears in my master's, looking at the movement patterns of bears in relation to human disturbances. And then kind of ended up in Washington, D.C. on a whim. I was looking for work after my master's. I was handed an advertisement to come work at the World Bank. I remember before my interview at the World Bank having to open the Wikipedia page and figure out what the World Bank was, because it wasn't really in my background. Yeah, and I've been there for almost 10 years now. I am part of the geospatial team, the Geospatial Operational Support Team, or GHOST. We look at bringing geospatial insight into World Bank operations, trying to reduce costs. And then for those of you who aren't sort of intimately familiar with the World Bank, we focus on a lot of different things, but the principal concept of the World Bank is to provide low-interest loans to developing countries to improve their economies. So a big part of what our team does is teaching our economists what geography is, right? Teaching economists what maps are and how to use them properly, and trying to provide novel insight. Geospatial is often turned to as the sort of the repository of last resort in our data poor communities. So we are often asked to provide insight in areas where there's not a lot of information. So that often relies on a lot of satellite imagery. We do a lot of work with both public and private satellite images, extracting information from Planet, Sentinel, Maxar imagery, and Landsat as well as a lot of derived products. I think many of you in this meeting would be familiar with some of the forest loss products, some of the standard elevation built area products. All of these are the kind of things that we use to try and inform the planning and monitoring of World Bank operations. Nighttime lights is an interesting example. The economists are fascinated by this as it's a proxy for economic development. Yeah, so it's polar orbiting satellites that measure the brightness of Earth at night. Anyone who's not familiar with them, they are a completely accidental remote sensing repository. They come from a defense military satellite that was used to measure the reflectance of the moon off clouds. And it turns out when the clouds aren't there, they can see the Earth below, and the brightness of the lights have important proxies for population, GDP, electrification, a number of different variables. And I think that I want to mention these because I think I should put the link here. We just got it today. December 10th and 11th, there's a conference going on, the Geo4Dev conference, where we will be launching the Open Night Lights repository, which will have the entire history from 1992 until present. The nightly images will be available in cloud optimized geotips for anyone to access. A really powerful tool, and one that we're hoping a lot of people can really take advantage of. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. I do want to provide some examples of the kind of work we do that leverages OpenStreetMap. We do a lot of work in the institution trying to map access. For economists, we often think of these as market sheds or market access. But if you change the destination from jobs, ports, airports to hospitals, all of a sudden this is a humanitarian question. So this is an example of access to hospitals in Yemen that were conflict adjusted. So we spent a lot of time working with a number of UN agencies to get maps and data describing the current extent of the conflict. And the purpose of the project was to say, well, what percentage of the population had lost access to healthcare because of the current nature, both damage to roads, as well as sort of impassable, I think what was referred to at the time as the war front. I think this was especially interesting. This is all leveraged. This all starts from an OpenStreetMap base map, and both the UN and the World Bank standardized on OSM as the data collection platform. So when you were sort of cataloging and measuring the quality or destruction to roads, OSM IDs were the principal sort of reference data set. And this is something that we've been trying to do more and more at the World Bank, is to sort of leverage OpenStreetMap whenever possible and use it as a primary data repository. Right? I have a huge project going on right now in Romania as part of the census, where they're going to be collecting building locations for every building in the country, and we're looking at trying to integrate that data into OpenStreetMap, so it would have not just a building footprints data set, but an updated data set describing residential, commercial classifications, height, and a number of other attributes. A couple other examples that really is sort of more related to COVID, related to hospitals. Here we're talking about travel time to critical care facilities in Kenya. They have identified approximately 70 different hospitals that are capable of providing critical care, versus hundreds of other facilities that are simple healthcare facilities down to individual doctors' offices. And the comparison of these two these two maps is important because it allows us to design projects to improve the healthcare system as it relates to sort of vulnerable populations, especially in the time of COVID, where there are many of our more rural populations don't have access to the healthcare necessary to deal with the COVID crisis, but they're also not necessarily the places where the outbreaks are the strongest. So there's a tension between sort of urban, rural, densely populated, and poorly served communities, and how we deal with that over the next coming years will be incredibly important to containing the disease in some of the most vulnerable communities we work with. I also want to quickly show this example of we've been developing these infrastructure atlases, leveraging data from OpenStreetMap, and trying to essentially put as much information as we can concerning a specific economic variable of interest. In this case, we're looking at transport. So we have railways, highways, all those come from OpenStreetMap, and then we combine that with ports and airports from there's actually commercial databases on the sort of the movement of people and goods, as well as border crossings. And an important aspect here is to communicate to our colleagues, both internally and our clients and country, that these open repositories can be a valuable source of information if the data that is available in country is not up to date or not available in a consumable format. We often turn to OpenStreetMap as an important source of data when it comes to sort of starting these discussions with our client countries. Just quickly, I've only got a couple minutes left, and I wanted to provide some advice and some suggestions as far as developing your career in geography. A couple of principal things, I, as someone now who's looking to hire and backfill some positions at the World Bank, I really need people who are familiar with coding, right? I think geographers need to be data scientists, and I think that they need to have knowledge of Python or R or some other, it actually doesn't even particularly matter what the language is, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be, you don't need to be an advanced coder with numerous applications under your belt. Simply understanding the concept of how data is processed is foundational to sort of working in the modern geography department. The second would be to get involved in an open source project on GitHub. I tell this to people all the time. A lot of GitHub projects need people who are not expert coders, but who are well organized and good documentarians, good scientific writers. So if you're interested in geography, look for some projects that you find interesting and see if they need help with documentation, with their wikis, with their organization. And I think there's lots of good opportunities to get involved in the community without necessarily being an absolute expert. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Great, thank you very much, Ben. And you've demonstrated that you can do field work on grizzly bears and survive to still have a career in geography. Our fifth and final speaker on this panel is Ed Vallejo. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, Ed. Ed is an epidemiologist and PEPFAR program manager at the Office of the Global AIDS Coordinator, Embassy in Washington, D.C. As a member of PEPFAR's GIS team, he collaborates with mapping specialists from various U.S. government agencies on projects primarily related to HIV/AIDS. Ed also assists with the training of career development of fellows and interns assigned to the office. Prior to joining the State Department, Ed was a global health fellow based in Nigeria and South Africa with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, where he learned to use a variety of mapping platforms for public health. Over to you, Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm just going to share my screen here. 1 second, please.
Yes, I could hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. Share that. Okay, are you seeing my presentation?
Yes, I could see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. My name is Ed Vallejo, and I'm honored to be part of this panel. Thank you for asking me to be here to lead Tom, Rachel, Laura, everyone on the team. So I'm here to speak to you today about an overview of PEPFAR's use of maps to achieve HIV epidemic control. I came from a public health and research background and learned GIS later in my career. And it's been pretty phenomenal ever since then. So happy to speak to you all about this today. Okay, so just a quick overview on PEPFAR. So what is PEPFAR? PEPFAR stands for the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. And it's the largest commitment by any nation to address a single disease in history, enabled by strong bipartisan support across 9 Congresses and 3 presidential administrations, and through the American people's generosity. PEPFAR 1's focus was an emergency response to save lives, focusing on individuals with late-stage AIDS-defining illness. PEPFAR 2 was moving towards an AIDS-free generation by building and strengthening health systems to deliver HIV services and the scaling up of prevention, care, and treatment. And PEPFAR 3 and beyond is focused on accelerating core interventions for epidemic control, which involves sustainability and the use of granular data, quality, and oversight. So PEPFAR has 3 guiding pillars for us to control the HIV pandemic, and that's focused around accountability, transparency, and impact, which allows us to have more active program and partner management. So for 2020, PEPFAR has 3 key goals: sustain the gains in countries that have achieved epidemic control and ensure treatment retention, accelerate control in the handful of countries that are not on the brink of control, and address the rising new infections or slow progress in key population epidemics around the globe. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, these all remain our three main key goals, and we've still made pretty good progress in spite of everything going on. So our program results at mid-year, millions of people on life-saving treatment, millions of men have voluntary medical male circumcisions, which is a proven intervention for preventing HIV transmission. Millions of orphans, vulnerable children, their caregivers are provided with critical care and support. And 100% of our DREAMS districts are in decline of new HIV infection diagnosis. And DREAMS districts are in multiple countries that we support, which is a program focused on at-risk young women and girls. And DREAMS stands for Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-Free, Mentored, and Safe. So here's our map from last year of our world activities, which remains the same for 2020. So PEPFAR supports over 50 countries, and we have 3 regional programs, a Western Hemisphere program that involves countries in the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, West Africa program, and an Asia regional program. So mapping over time through the different phases of PEPFAR, we went from putting pins on existing maps, just trying to figure out where the problems were and where we could start to put services, to then leveraging technology such as GIS programs that you're all familiar with, to really get to the heart of where the epidemic was taking place. And then moving over time to using very granular data that involves also the open data that's now available to more hyper target our response to helping as many people as we can. So here's one of my favorites. This is work done by our team that was presented at the International AIDS Symposium about 1.5 years ago. Members of our GIS group that do this are Gina Sarfati from USAID and our PEPFAR GIS team lead, Nathan Hurd. Went ahead one. And basically, this study sought to characterize the stability of identified clusters of HIV positivity in the Lake Victoria Basin. This area was selected because the counties and districts that border the lake are among those with the highest HIV prevalence of their respected countries. This is located at the border of several countries in Africa. The left, you can see HIV positivity, and on the right, you can see clustering. The reds are statistically significant hotspots, which means that there is high positivity surrounded by more high positivity. And similarly, the blues are significant clusters of relatively low HIV positivity. This process was repeated for 8 quarters, and that's where they got the clustering data from. The end of this analysis, they detected what seemed to be at least 4 stable clusters of high HIV positivity, as well as 2 unstable clusters appearing significant in at least 3, but not all of the quarters. So moving on to how some of our data has been used in other aspects of a humanitarian response. So last year with the cyclones that hit Mozambique, the PEPFAR Mozambique team utilized a UN-generated list of affected districts, as well as on antiretroviral treatment to determine how many people living with HIV were affected, both at the district and at the site level. This allowed the PEPFAR Mozambique implementing partners to conduct human resources for health assessment at the accessible sites to estimate the availability of health workers for providing HIV services. So the team triangulated this information with aerial photographs of the flooding, maps, and information gathered from the implementing partners. So moving on to how we've been using open data more, the local context really does matter. The quality of the roads, the nature of local commerce, health facility, infrastructure, schools, and religious institutions all matter to our epidemic response. As you've probably gained from the previous presentations, it turns out that many of the places we've prioritized for scale up are poorly mapped. This can be true even in relatively urban areas like this place here in Tanzania, which is a DREAMS district. PEPFAR decided to reach out to the global community of volunteer open mappers. As you know, it's a community that uses satellite imagery to trace roads and buildings, often in places they've never been. And it's also people who want to identify a building in their neighborhood, for example, a school or a clinic. The volunteers built these maps on OpenStreetMap, which our GIS team lead, Nate Hurd, loves to say is seriously addictive. And if you've ever done it before, it really is. PEPFAR has open mapping projects in Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. So the resulting product is hundreds of thousands of buildings added and tens of thousands of kilometers of roads, and more being done all of the time. So what can you do to help and get involved? You've already heard about MapGive. That's actually how I learned to use that whole interface, and it's great. In a short amount of time, you can get up and running. In terms of career paths for the US federal government, there's a couple different programs. We have the Virtual Student Federal Service, and our GIS team lead and myself had the pleasure of hosting a few interns from that group last year. There's also CDC Global Health Fellowships. That's how I got my start in PEPFAR and Global Health almost 8 years ago. You've already heard about the Pathways program, which has 3 sub-programs, an internship, one for recent graduates, and the Presidential Management Fellows program. And our office has had the pleasure of working with people from all of those different programs, and it's a great way for you to get immersed in the federal government and see if it is a career path you'd like to take. So in closing out, just looking to the future, any career advice that I can give, what are some, I'd say, number one, look at the trends that are going on now. I'm sure over the last year, either your family, friends, or yourselves have become either highly trained epidemiologists, and now in the coming months, constitutional law scholars. So kind of take a look at what's going on in the world and just try and foresee how your skills can fit into that. Around the GIS world, you're always hearing now about artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's still some time off, so there's always use for your expertise. Learn a new complementary skill. I've spoken about before, learning a coding language. Python works really well with GIS. Seek out a mentor. It's easier now more than ever in the virtual space to just try and reconnect or connect with people to help you, help guide you along your career path, and give back. Like I said, you can go to the MapGive link, learn how to map, and right after this presentation, you can be up and running and start to help people around the world. So thank you very much for the time, and I hope you learned something new.
Thank you very much, Ed. And to all our panelists, these were some amazing presentations, and we have 15 minutes left to go over some general questions and answers. And I definitely want to encourage participation from the audience. If you guys have any questions, please add them to the chat. We'll be sure to add them. And remember that after this panel is over, we have a follow-in panel at 2:30 featuring a lot of great private companies. In addition, a lot of people shared a lot of interesting career-related links, and we'll be sure to send those via email to all those who RSVP'd through Eventbrite. So I have some questions to kick things off. I think I'll ask one of the panelists to sort of answer a question initially, and then ask other panelists to weigh in. We have a lot of government and NGOs, organizations in this panel. And some of you have experience in the private sector. I know that as I was deciding a career, I wasn't sure if I should go to government or the private sector. So maybe other people are interested as well. I know that Mikel Crino has a lot of experience in sort of both sides of the coin. So maybe you could sort of share some insight with us, Mikel.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, that's a good question. I think the easiest way for me to answer, and it's coming from the biases of your own perspective here, is it's really both. In terms of where I work now in international development, the problems that we're solving, There's no way we can do it entirely just as employees of the federal government. And then there's no way that I think that it could just only be a private sector solution either. I really do think in order for us to achieve what we all want is the upward mobility of the societies around the world and the type of work that we're doing at USAID, there's going to be significant contributions to both. I think the best option you can have over a long period or a long career is to try and work in both sides. I think that's going to give you the greatest perspective in the long run to see when you're in the private sector, you have maybe a little bit more flexibility, but not as much influence. When you're on the government side, you're going to have certain opportunities to drive an agenda that is pretty unique to government, but you may not have the technical ability to at least quickly deliver some of those options on your own. So I don't think there's a wrong option. I think the best option, though, is to try and get experience in both. And if you can't get experience in both, just spend time with people in both, because the perspective is going to be important in each arena, and will be needed to actually get the outcome that you would like.
Excellent. Any other panelists want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I think I spent a bit of time in private doing software development with ESRI. I mean, that's a very different sort of kettle of fish working in a software company like that. But I do think that I think there's opportunity in private sector to do good work, and I don't know that there's as big a difference between the two as there maybe has been in the past. At the World Bank, we have lots of partnerships with a lot of private sector companies that really do want to do a lot of good work and really want to try to find a way to contribute to public goods. So I do think that I think that there's a lot of opportunity to do good in both. But I would also say that no matter what you're looking at, just give it, don't close any doors, right? Don't think you're don't get frustrated with the government and say force yourself to go find a job in a software company. And then on the other side, don't turn down. There's lots of interesting work going on in government that there's access, there's mandates in the government that you don't have in private. So I would say that they're interesting juxtapositions, but I don't know that they're necessarily absolutely different all the time.
Okay, great. We have a question for Ed. Ed, are there any suggestions you have on how to find mentors?
Okay, can you hear me? So I think, yeah, that's a cool question. I think, for myself, I was lucky enough to find mentors starting in school. It was just people whose classes I had taken. And then over time, getting to work with folks. I work with Nate Hurd, and I have no problem telling him this all the time. You probably heard never meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you. But Nate has definitely risen way above that, and I always kind of throw that at him. I think in the world that we live in now, it's actually fairly easy to just even just shooting someone an email after you kind of figure out what your interests are. And even then, just trying to be respectful of that person's time. They might be too busy maybe at that point, so you could reach and talk to them later, but also just be like, well, if you can't provide any mentorship or guidance to me, can you suggest people who will? And I've actually worked with a lot of interns and fellows who have developed really great relationships that have gone over years. So I think like in this environment, I don't think you should really be put off from just sort of like cold emailing somebody and then kind of going that route. Hope that helps. Yeah,
definitely. And I know at State Department, we get a lot of emails. There's a lot of opportunities for possible mentorship. So I want to ask Laura if she had any experience with that or any other avenues for mentorships.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd second his comment. If you have a established relationship with somebody, if you were an intern or what have you, stay in touch. The geographic community and geographers community is actually really pretty small, and we know a lot of each other and interact over the years together. So keep in touch, drop us a note. If you were an intern a year or two ago, drop us a note and let us know what you're up to now. I think that goes for any internship that you might be in. I'm sure your the folks that you worked with before would be interested in keeping in touch and keeping apprised of all the different and new ways that you're staying active in the geography community. I would also encourage, you know, sometimes email is a little too busy, and folks are really unable to kind of continue email threads on, say, mentoring or something else. But oftentimes, you know, if it's just a one-time, hey, can we do a coffee chat? Usually, I certainly know I can try and fit time for that in my schedule. It's kind of those longer, continuous type mentoring activities that sometimes then that's when you have a relationship and establish a relationship with someone that you might be able to sustain that. But yeah, most folks are interested in kind of having an informational chat and just telling a little bit about what their experience was like, and hopefully giving you some ideas on how you might craft your own career path.
Okay, great. There's a really good question coming in. I think I want Geoffrey to help answer this. By the way, it's great hearing about the Audacity project. That looks amazing. But being able to produce accurate data maps, you need good quality base maps with the necessary data and features. What steps are being taken to improve the consistency and quality of available database maps?
Yeah, data quality is very important. So it's not good like just to focus only on the quantity of the data, but also on the quality, because this data is being used, you know, to respond like to humanitarian responses, but also for other purposes. So what I can say about data quality is that at HOT we have like trying to build the capacity of validators. So the mapping process we follow is that there is a group of volunteers who do mapping, but also have a group who do validation. So we have a tool that we use that we call the tasking manager, where someone completes a square and another person comes and validates the work that was done by a mapper. So by the time those two processes are finished, at least we have a methodology of checking the data quality and make sure that we are getting good quality data from a project. But also we run trainings. We run like validator trainings where the focus is on data quality. So we have like 2 trainings every month that anyone can join from the mapping community and learn why data quality is important and how they can contribute to improve the data quality. The good thing is that it's like an open process. Anyone can contribute, but everyone is responsible for the data quality on OpenStreetMap.
Okay, thank you, Geoffrey. And I know that a lot of other partners are all interested and focus a lot on data quality as well. There's a question here that I'm going to direct to Ben. What are some resources for learning Python? I'm also fortunate enough to work on Ben's team, and I know not everyone is fortunate to work for Ben's team. I know I've learned a lot of Python that way, but Ben, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I saw that question. I was trying to think. Well, I first learned Python in 2006, so I'd hope the resources would have improved a little bit since then. So if you're just looking for some things to check out, a good friend of mine and a really talented Python programmer now did learn Python the hard way. It is a bit more of an intense introduction, but I think it starts from real bases and sort of focuses on some sort of foundational skills. I think another good way is, and this is actually similar to the question about mentors, I think it's very important to find something that you actually want to apply the question to. It's really hard to learn something like Python if you're like, oh, I want to learn Python, teach me how. And this is similar to the question for mentors. I find when people reach out and they want to talk GIS, I'm much more interested if they're asking me a specific question about a project I've worked on, right? So when someone comes to me, there's a great project I worked on at electrifynow.energydata.info, where we're doing least cost electrification planning. And I had someone reach out to me with a specific question about some results in a specific country, and they shared a link to the results, and we started that conversation. And then I'm still in contact with them fairly frequently, just about random GIS questions. But it all started because they showed interest and they were eager to learn that. So I would start by, for resources for learning Python, the first would be, as far as actual resources, learn Python the hard way is great. The second is to find something that you really think would be a strong application, right? Is there some GIS task you've done before that you really want to automate? Is there something you've tried to do in ArcGIS or QGIS that you're really dissatisfied with how you have to go through it? See if you can't learn how to do that properly. I think Tom and I, because Tom and I really do a lot of data processing, and a lot of it is people will sort of tell us how to do something, and we figure out that's great. How do I then automate that for every administrative one district in Africa, right? Like it's for us. We really think a lot about automation. So that's how we. I mean, that's what we end up talking a lot about. So yeah, those would be the two things: find a passion and learn Python the hard way.
Some good advice there. And now time for our last question. I think this is a great question, something I had in mind. This is for anyone to just reach out and start responding, panelists. But how do all of you work with OpenStreetMap? Are you all adding to the same data set? I would think that would mean either like the same location or place maybe. Do you work with different groups of volunteers? Are there limits to what you can put on OpenStreetMap or open source software in general? I think this also leads us to sort of how we all collaborate with different organizations too.
Yeah, I'll jump in here because at the World Bank, like I mentioned, we really are trying to push people towards OpenStreetMap. I didn't mention in my presentation any of what capacity building. Like I've been to actually just I'm in the process of renewing my visa, and I had to list all the places I've been to in the last 5 years. And I've done training workshops on the use of QGIS, OpenStreetMap, Python, and GIS in Ghana, Zambia, Haiti, Pakistan, Italy, all just in the last couple of years, right? These are and we really are focused on it. We focus more and more on open source tools because we don't want to tie people down to existing solutions. So that would be, we really do try and push people towards contributing data to OpenStreetMap. Anytime anybody we work with talks about trying to build their own internal spatial data infrastructure, I don't want to dissuade people, but it's like, hey, you could just put that data in OpenStreetMap and then you wouldn't have to maintain the database long term. So that's it for us. It's a lot of capacity building. It's a lot of finding participants in client countries, and it's, OpenStreetMap is a foundational part of GIS training to me. Right, you get a day on GIS, you get a day on introduction to QGIS, and then you have an entire day on OpenStreetMap.
And just to echo his reference to OpenStreetMap, yes, we found that oftentimes maintaining licenses for other proprietary softwares can be expensive. And so OpenStreetMap has really been a great tool, and QGIS as well has really developed over the past 5 years as far as its functionality. So it's a great tool and a great resource. We certainly encourage open data. And as he said, with capacity building, we've had a number of workshops, and folks are always really interested in OpenStreetMap and the networks that are around OpenStreetMap. Youth Mappers has an amazing network to reach out to. The only thing I'll mention too is that in the capacity building and in the training, we do have a lot of focus on the ethics of participatory mapping and publishing data publicly. There are a lot of sensitivities. We look at not just putting roads and buildings in when we do some of our local mapping activities, but also human geography data. So key points of interest, hospitals, churches, other things. But we realize there then that's a sensitivity, and it's certainly something to be aware of. Our MapGive and our secondary cities websites do have some of our ethics materials and guidelines and trainings on there if folks are interested, but definitely, yeah, we all try and work together, and there's plenty more to be done.
I'll just jump in a little bit, Tom, and thanks, Laura. Youth Mappers really is an enabler of open geographic data. And you were asking about the platforms. Most of the contributions are coming through the hot tasking manager, as I think you know, but it's moving forward. I think that's going to be the case, but it's not going to necessarily be exclusive either. There's other opportunities for contributing open geographic edits to OpenStreetMap that we're going to continue to explore. And it's going to actually come now that these Youth Mapper chapters are starting to mature. Many of them have been in place for a while. They're going to be the ones producing some of the novel approaches for how to make those contributions. I do think we have a little bit more work to do on the USAID side in thinking about the security and privacy factors of the data. It's not so much on the infrastructure side, like roads and buildings and so forth, but as the data starts to reach more at the beneficiary level, and that's something that's an agency-wide issue that is being taken up in a number of different channels. And I think the open geographic data is certainly going to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and just quickly to feed off of Laura and Michael's points in terms of security and limits on what we can put on the open source software is, PEPFAR, we do a lot of work with some sensitive locations and human geography. So we have, locations of military groups, organizations, but especially I mentioned earlier key populations. So these are groups such as female sex work, commercial sex workers, men who have sex with men, and in publishing data on some facilities that might cater specifically to these organizations in certain countries, that could put them at risk. So that's actually one of the first things I was involved in the very beginning of my career in PEPFAR, where actually our GIS team lead, Nate Hurd, had kind of called together a group of folks to sort of discuss those issues. And even today, he runs our data governance side to really examine this stuff. And we know that we keep certain information close hold to protect those groups and the security of those individuals and organizations. But yeah, Youth Mappers is awesome. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I want to thank the panelists very much for your contributions today and the audience as well for attending. We have on the same Zoom channel, the other panel focusing on private companies in 10 minutes. So I encourage you all to stay, maybe get up, stretch a little bit, get a little snack, and then meet us here in a little bit. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the private companies career panel here on behalf of MapGive, the Department of State, their open mapping initiative. My name is Matt Gibb, not to be confused with MapGive. But I work at Maxar. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. I want to thank Tom and Rachel for organizing these panels and for asking me to moderate the private companies panel that we're about to kick off here. And I appreciate that this has given me an opportunity to wear something that is not a t-shirt or a sweatshirt for the first time in the past 8 months. So I forgot how to do the buttons. It's a thing. So we do have a great group of people here to chat with you today from a range of different companies. Before we start, I want to thank each and every one of them for taking the time out of their days to be a part of this panel. So today, after I introduce our panelists, they will each take about 5 to 7 minutes to tell you a little bit about themselves, what they do, and a bit about how their work or their companies utilize and contribute to either GIS or OpenStreetMap generally. And then we'll have some discussion and questions amongst the panel, and we'll also have some time to field questions from everyone attending here. And so without further ado, I will give a brief introduction of each of the panelists. First, we will have Mikel Maron from MapBox. He's the community team lead at MapBox. He's helping grow the adoption of open geodata in humanitarian organizations, governments, and education, and advancing work with OpenStreetMap. He was a Presidential Innovation Fellow at the US Department of State, and Mikel drove OpenStreetMap adoption across different federal agencies while there. He's the co-founder of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team and co-founder of MapKibera and the Ground Truth Initiative, and a current board member of the OpenStreetMap Foundation. He has a master's degree in evolutionary and adaptive systems from the University of Sussex and a bachelor's degree in computer science from UC Santa Cruz. From Maxar, we have Dana Stuckey, who is a senior manager there. She's based in the St. Louis area. Since graduating from Murray State, she's been leading geospatial projects and programs in St. Louis for over 16 years. In addition to managing geospatial production for US government customers, she is currently working on product development and forming new partnerships for academic, community, and research outreach activities in St. Louis. From ESRI, we have James Sullivan, who is a solution engineer manager. He's been with ESRI for 6 years, supporting the national government team in global business development. He currently manages the Geospatial Center team of solution engineers. And prior to ESRI, James served as an engineer officer in the US Army and was last assigned to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency based in Springfield, Virginia. We have Jesse Osborne from IncaTech. He is the Chief Technology Officer at IncaTech, and he earned his undergraduate and graduate degrees in Geography and Environmental Science and Geographic Information Systems from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and he is responsible for seeing IncaTech's technological vision, leading and growing IncaTech's expanding technical practice areas, maturing and establishing new technology partnerships, and leading R&D technical initiatives. From Microsoft, we have Harsh Govind, a product manager, focusing on open data and open source technologies. He previously spent 11 years with Digital Globe, focusing on strategic product work. He has master's degrees in engineering and business administration from the University of Cincinnati and Cornell University. From Development Seed, we have Marc Farra, who is an engineer and a member of the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. He's currently based in Beirut, Lebanon, where he founded OpenMap Lebanon to organize Lebanon map data and promote open data. From Azavea, we have Steph Wall, who is a project manager for the geospatial applications team, and she manages software development projects related to civic, social, and environmental issues. Prior to joining Azavea, Steph spent a decade in West Philadelphia nonprofit, helping to organize affordable housing as part of a larger community revitalization effort. She received a BA in sociology from SUNY Albany and a Master's of Science in urban planning from the University of Toronto. And then finally, last but not least, from Critigen, we have Chad Blevins, who is a geographer by trade, currently serving as a senior principal consultant with Critigen. He has spent the last 2 decades contracting for government agencies such as USGS, NGA, DoD, and most recently with USAID, where he co-founded Youth Mappers. He was first introduced to OSM during the Haiti earthquake in 2010 and has been an advocate ever since. And so again, welcome to all of our panelists. Thanks to everyone who is here today, attending and listening to the panel. I'm going to hand things over to the panelists now, and we'll basically go in that order. Each will have 5 to 7 minutes to present a little bit about themselves, and we'll go from there. So Mikel, we will start with you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mikel. I'm a mapper. I've been involved with technology and mapping for a long time. And I certainly see a lot of familiar faces. I think that's one thing that everyone could take away, particularly from the OpenStreetMap community, is that there's a lot of people who end up in different roles and different sides of from government to private companies to NGOs, but still are passionate about mapping and about open data and about OpenStreetMap. And I think that's what makes OSM really unique as a project and as a community, is that people with passion have really started to leverage the resources and the interest of these, the largest organizations in the world to collectively make a better map. There's been a pretty interesting Twitter discussion today, kicked off by Joe Morrison of Azavea, about how, and he has a Medium post as well, about how unique, maybe it's not that unique, there's probably other examples in the open source world, but to me it feels really the kind of collaboration that we have among different companies particularly, I think is really special. I've done a lot of different things in mapping in OSM, like Matt said, I'm on the board of the OpenStreetMap Foundation. now. I've been involved since pretty much year 1 or 2 with OSM. Got humanitarian OpenStreetMap team started. I think one of the great things about mapping is like it does get you out in the world. At least it used to get you out in the world. It will again, to apply technology to really hard problems in places. So I've been everywhere from the West Bank, working with activists to map every road and every place. The West Bank to the suburbs of Nairobi. Started a project called MapGibera with my wife just over 10 years ago, which is still going and really led by the community there. And yeah, I had a chance to be a part of MapGive as well for a year as a presidential innovation fellow, and like get a picture of what OpenStreetMap looks like from the government angle as well. And these days, I work at MapBox. I have for the past 5 years. When I first joined, my focus was pretty solely on OpenStreetMap, working with a data team. We had a data team in Bangalore and in Peru, and I looked at a number of things, including making sure that we were following best practice and developing best practice for companies to work in OpenStreetMap, which can be, if not done with care, can be sometimes an ill fit. So we really made sure that we, as a company entering that space, were communicative and caring and contributing. And I also spent a lot of time on validation and data quality, making sure that the data which MapBox is consuming into our products, and MapBox makes tools for developers to add maps to the applications, base maps, search, routing, make sure all of that data was high quality and didn't contain anything anything we didn't want in our maps that was problematic. So there's been a lot of work on pipelines and workflows to check every edit before it comes into our data. Other companies have done the same. We've also supported community tools to collectively validate and monitor what's happening in OSM. That tool is called OSMGeoWeek, osmgeoweek.org, which a lot of people use, and we still support. Yeah, I guess just to end, like OSM is a key part of our products. It's one of the key data sources that we use among a growing number of them. And yeah, our focus is really building great tools on top of that data, and making sure that the data itself is well looked after. Nowadays, it's just a portion of my work. I do get to spend time on the foundation stuff as well, and I also, most of my job is leading the community team. We support nonprofits and others who want to use MapBox or OpenStreetMap or anything else that we can help with to be successful. So that's a bit about me and MapBox. I guess we're supposed to say if we may or may, we're unsure about internships. Everything's kind of up in the air with COVID, so we're still seeing what kinds of programs come into place for internships. We are hiring, so check out our jobs page, mapbox.com/jobs, and I'm happy to reach out if I can help with anything at all. That's it.
Great, thank you, Mikel. Dana, we will head over to you.
All right, thanks, Matt. So if anybody on here isn't familiar with Maxar, we are a company of over 4,000 people working in the Earth intelligence and space infrastructure. We deliver content and products and solutions that are designed to help our customer understand and navigate the ever-changing world that we live in. So things from satellite imagery to satellite tasking, mapping data, products, analytic services, all things in that realm. We are headquartered out of Colorado with offices in 20 locations across the globe. And while we do a lot of business for US government agencies and international governments, and also working with commercial firms such as Google and Uber and Facebook. But in addition to that, I think we've been able to contribute to the OSM community in a meaningful way. I've been with Maxar for about 3 years, and one of the things that I have found very impactful here is our mission. We say our mission is for a better world, and I've really seen that in action here. So as I mentioned, imagery is a large part of our business, and I think if you've been living in the OSM world for a while, you'll have seen that come up in the editors within there. We also have a fantastic open data program where we are able to release imagery out into the community for disaster events. We've released some vector data out there recently as well. That's all licensed and available for use for the community. We've also done some mapathons with the American Red Cross and State Department of State. And we've got some crazy smart people at this company that have been able to contribute some validation checks and tools into the editors and the brains that you've seen behind map rules. They're living here at Maxar too, which I think has been a fantastic tool for everyone. Let's see. Matt, are we getting into internship stuff now? I can absolutely.
Yeah, if you've got some stuff about internships and a little bit about your career as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so as far as internships, I think this past year, most every workforce has transitioned to remote, right? And our internship program did as well. We had over 154 interns support our company remotely. And following that internship period, over half of them were invited to participate or to join us in full-time or part-time positions, which I think was incredible. We've got some that maybe hadn't finished their degree yet that are coming back for this summer too. So our positions for 2021 just recently posted to our website. So if you're interested in one, please head over to maxar.com/careers and look for the Explore Open Positions button on there. You'll be able to query from the filters that are there to look for internships. There's also full-time and part-time positions out there if that's something you're looking for too. If you don't see something that's the right fit for you right now, there's an option on there to join our talent network. So we would invite you to load your resume there and connect with any of our recruiters. And if you had any questions, please feel free to reach out to me as well.
Great. Thank you, Dana. Moving on to James, who is going to show some of his work at ESRI.
Not necessarily my work, but just talk about ESRI and some of the opportunities that we have available for internships. Can everyone see the slides? Awesome. All right. So yeah, like Matt said, I'm James. I'm with ESRI. I work in global business development, supporting our national government customers. So some quick overview of ESRI as a company. So who we are, we're the global leader in GIS software, location intelligence and mapping. We have offices we have over 100 offices worldwide, and those are in 67 different countries that support our users around the world. Some quick numbers. So our software is used by 90 of the 100 Fortune 100 companies and over half of the Fortune 500 companies. We're really big in state and local governments. We're used in all 50 US state governments, as well as all 15 executive departments, as well as dozens of independent US agencies. Our software is leveraged in 87 of the Forbes top 100 colleges, including where I did my bachelor's at West Point. They have a really good GIS program. We heavily leveraged ArcGIS there. And then another really interesting fact is that we invest 30% of our revenue in R&D each year, which just percentage-wise is pretty high. For comparison, companies like Apple invest roughly 10% of their annual revenue in R&D. So we make a significant investment to keep developing the products and support our users. So who we serve, we exist solely to support and serve our customers. So some of the biggest names in industry, government, and non-governmental organizations around the world. And we help them solve, some of the most challenging problems that the world faces. everything from climate change to food production, humanitarian relief, business growth, in addition to national security, which is a lot of what I've focused on, supporting those national government customers. So just a quick snapshot of some of our industries and businesses. In the commercial sector, some high-profile customers would be like Starbucks or FedEx or John Deere leverage our software. In the government space, broken out in the different key industries like defense and intelligence, so any major branch of the military or any of the 3-letter intelligence agencies. And then in the nonprofit space, also in the government, obviously, big in the civilian agencies, so like Census Bureau, NASA, NOAA, USDA, Bureau of Land Management leverage our tools. And then in the nonprofit space, we have a really big effort supporting our nonprofits where we offer huge discounts on the software to support nonprofit customers and workflows. So we're big with the customers like the WHO and the World Bank. All right, so our technology, we build ArcGIS. That's our main product. We are a software company. And at the heart of that is the ESRI Geospatial Cloud. And this enables users of the software to do everything from, mapping and location enablement to some more complex spatial analysis, which is, we consider to be our bread and butter, doing the in-depth, complicated spatial analysis. And then, anything else from ingesting real-time data sources to doing location analytics and spatial business intelligence. And even though we are a software company, we still make a big investment in providing out data and location services. That way, when you go to use the software, you have as much information as you need to solve your problem or complete your workflow at your fingertips. You don't have to go out and get all that from scratch. So we provide everything from demographics to environmental data to base maps. And that's where OpenStreetMap ties in as a data service that we provide. So moving into a quick demonstration, one of our key offerings for data services is the Living Atlas. So if I come here and search for OpenStreetMap, I can see all the different offerings that we provide. So ESRI started working with OpenStreetMap, providing OpenStreetMap as base map layers. So they started as raster tiles that were hosted by OSM, and then that's evolved over time into ESRI generating and hosting vector tiles, which are updated every 3 weeks with the latest OpenStreetMap data available. And then this year, actually, we started providing out a new set of feature layers that provide access to OpenStreetMap data. So it's a replication of the OpenStreetMap data that's hosted in ArcGIS Online and configured to scale. So then you can use these feature layers to conduct spatial analysis or to filter or adjust the symbology as you see fit. And just like OpenStreetMap, this data is published under an open database license. So we've got different groupings here. We've also have this trending category where we can see things that are new and noteworthy. For example, pulling out medical facilities in North America. So just a quick example of how you could use that. Here I'm in our map viewer beta, and I've already configured the base map to leverage a vector tile style of the OpenStreetMap data, but just configured with this dark gray canvas coloring. And if I want to search for a layer, I can browse ArcGIS Online, and I can grab that medical facility layer, add that into my map. And because this is a live layer, I can click on the points, interact with it to get information on the pop-up, or link back to the feature in OpenStreetMap. But I can also do things like clustering. So if I want to enable clustering, either more or less, depending on what kind of features I want to have show up on my map, we'll shut that off. Or I could filter the data. So, if I just wanted to maybe go get my flu shot, and I wanted to do that at a CVS I could filter these facilities for all of my CVSs. I could go take care of that. So that's working with the feature layers. Working with the vector tiles, we also provide out a vector tile style editor. So again, we have the OpenStreetMap data brought in here. And just real quick, you have the option if you want to quickly and easily configure your own base maps. Maybe I want to highlight parks or natural areas. I can go in here and adjust the coloring, or I can do something a little more in depth if I want to search for golf courses and make those stand out, or adjust the labeling. You've got that option as well. You can see those start to pop out on the map.
James is here, 7-minute warning.
All right, so wrapping things up, I'm on my last component. As you can see here from the little video playing on our career site, working at ESRI is a ton of fun. Everyone's smiling and turning in circles, which is what we do. And you can search our job site. We're hiring plenty of full-time positions, but if you search on internship, you'll see that we currently have several internships available for the summer. And so we're hiring right now. We'll be looking at resumes through December. We'll be scheduling interviews on a rolling process, and then looking to make a final selection early January. So if you're interested, reach out or browse our career site to find out more. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Jesse, we will go over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you see it. Okay, good?
Yep, good to go.
All right. So thank you very much again for the opportunity to talk a little bit about IncaTech here during GIS Day and OpenStreetMap Geo Awareness Week. I wanted to give a quick introduction of who we are, what we do, and how we do it. IncaTech, we are a small business, 100% woman-owned 8A tech firm out in Reston, Virginia. We have a few different practice areas, namely enterprise content management, cloud and platform services, user-centered design, and more importantly, GIS, or more relevant to today, GIS. So the Geographic Information Systems portfolio or practice that we have here has a number of different projects. I came into the company as the GIS practice lead and helped grow that. I've transitioned into the CTO role. Thanks for the introduction. I won't go back through that. But I will touch a little bit upon my history. I started off as a geographer on the government side, a research scientist at the USGS, and I've been in a carousel around the government supporting in a variety of different GIS capacities, ranging from architect to developer to data scientist to analyst, and then I also wrote and delivered the geospatial intelligence curriculum down at FBI Academy a number of years. And it was that last one where I really learned the value of becoming a force multiplier. And that I really took that to heart. And when I came over to IncaTech, I wanted to use that as an opportunity to create a community of community builders using a certain servant leadership model, and served very well for us. And so talk a little bit about IncaTech's commitment to the different missions that matter, as we like to say. Rather than sort of showing off a laundry list of all the different customers that we serve, I really like to hone in on the value that we provide, right? And so we have a commitment to different missions that matter. It's hard to, pick your favorites here, but considering the forum, I'd like to give a shout out to those that we very proudly serve at Bureau of INR, at Department of State, our staff supporting the MapGive program with Tom and Erica, and doing great things there and hosting mapathons and contributing to OpenStreetMap. We also serve a number of other customers that use OpenStreetMap as data to corroborate workflows and things of that nature. One being our support of the Joint Chiefs of Staff down at Fort Belvoir. We're developing a large enterprise scale data repository using some pretty cool machine learning AI with natural language processing and extracting out all of those really valuable spatiotemporal entities, making sense of that and corroborating some of that against OpenStreetMap data. I'll push forward to talk a little bit about the GIS practice and core capabilities that we have. Again, we work with solutions delivery, which is providing our customers either the solutions or personnel to create those solutions. And these are the key areas where we have a lot of deep expertise, ranging from sort of the full range of the geospatial professional, as I like to think about it, from the analytical side of the house to the engineering side of the house. We have a lot of expertise kind of spanning that area, and I'll jump over here and maybe give you a little bit of better picture on this, because we put a strong emphasis on professional development, putting our staff members in the driver's seat for their career, the development of kind of where they want to go, what they're interested in, and providing them a framework to be able to look at themselves and introspectively judge their maturity level across the full spectrum of geospatial professionals. And so, for this example here, we take a look at, your abilities behind geospatial intelligence analysis, GIS modeling, remote sensing specialist, jumping down to engineering. You get a full composite view of geospatial professionals. And again, our company puts a lot of resources behind keeping up with this very rapidly evolving geospatial technology industry, and really putting resources behind that, because it's the people that we have in house that really delivers the value to our customers. And so, with respect to internships and co-ops and so on and so forth, we've had a number of different experiences of people coming into the company and kind of helping out as interns and co-ops on a part-time basis, growing into the position and transitioning into a full-time employee. We've had several success stories in that. We've learned lessons that you really need fostering and to develop people. Making sure that people aren't off on an island, but also striking the right balance of providing them enough ability to really kind of own their area. And if it is of your interest to come and join our team, I'll jump over to IncaTech -corp.com, and you could jump right over to, I'm sorry, I might have too many things open and bandwidth issues. My audio and video is still coming through okay, right? Okay, well, there we go. So just jumping over to careers here, you go to job listings. We have a number of different positions, GIS and otherwise, to help serve our customers. And so if you are of interest, I highly encourage you to take a look. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jesse. All right, Harsh, over to you.
Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Harsh. I'm a product/program manager at Microsoft. I focus on the open data program. And as Matt mentioned, I come from the digital globe background. I used to work for a very small company, which was one of the third fastest growing company in the Washington, D.C. metro area called SPADAC, which stood for Spatial Data Analytics Corporation, that got bought by GOI and then got bought by Digital Globe. At that point, I bailed, and well, there were more MDA and Maxar. So all my friends, as Mikel mentioned, it's really interesting. You almost feel like you're going in circles here with the folks just sitting across different tables. But the idea is that it's the passion around the open data effort that brings these folks together. I didn't join Microsoft for the open data program. I came here to basically manage their pipeline to refresh Bing Maps. And I got this opportunity only last year, and it's been amazing building the open data team literally from scratch and now delivering products into the Bing Maps product portfolio, where, or basically the Bing portfolio, where these are being used by many of our customers, on our consumers. So Matt, maybe if you can share your screen with a web browser and your favorite search engine, I'll show you how easy it is to keep track of what we are doing. If you can search for Microsoft Open Maps team, so we are open in true sense. If you go to the first link, which is the GitHub, you will see that this one, it's the next one. Yeah. So if you look at this, you can see, scroll down a little bit, you'll get the introduction, you'll get the license. What are we doing with our building footprints program? So on Bing Maps, when you go, we use OSM buildings. The entire layer in anywhere in the world is coming from OSM, but we also enhance the OSM data by computer vision extracted building footprints in US, Canada, Uganda, Tanzania. It's a very interesting program, and you can read all about that in those links. You can see our JOSM street side plugin. So we use sensors like the street side data that we have, the satellite imagery that we get as part of Bing Maps imagery, which is sourced from multiple providers. I see some of my friends over there already on the screen where we get data from. And so we use all that and enhance OSM to in regions that we find the results for our search engine and our consumers are not at par. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can also see all the projects that we have finished. And if you see, there's the last line of the screen says, for any more information, reach out to Open Maps team. So you can reach out to us at openmaps@microsoft.com. You can also reach us at osm@microsoft.com, or you can personally reach me at harsh.govind@osm.com. So these are all these fields, all these ways of reaching us. If you scroll back up, one thing I wanted to show, which is the real excitement, is all the way up, please, and click on the issues. You will see issues is how we track what we are doing right now. And if you click on road editing in Peru, the second one, you will see that we have put out what our intent is. What are we doing there? And we have put it out in both Spanish and English. And then it's really amazing. We share this with the community in possible forums on Slack, on if we know their emails, we try to find power mappers, communicate with them. And also see the fun thing is that we get community involvement there as well. We get people reaching out to us saying, oh, can you make sure you do it this way, or can you do it that way, or I'm interested in helping you out. So very interesting community built up. And I think, Mikel, you definitely deserve a kudos here for helping us, connect with the right people. I have many eyes. It seems like I'm running the program, but not really. There are many eyes on the Open Data program. Chad's smiling because he's one of my go-to people. Digital Globe, Maxar folks are ones who always are there to help. So this open data program actually brings a lot of things together. One of the other things that I want to talk about real quick, if you open the search engine again and type missing maps, one word, partners, Microsoft. So you can do all these searches and see how we are involved. So if you click on the first link, you will see the partner page and scroll down just a little bit. That's amazing, those numbers right there. We just crossed 1 million edits and we are closing in on basically drawing 1 million buildings. So this is a Microsoft-wide event that we do, especially a lot more in October because that's our Give month. And so the idea is that we, you know, especially in this time of pandemic where people couldn't go and volunteer in person, they just got on, many folks around Microsoft got online into missingmaps.org and drew buildings. If you scroll down, there's a whole set of projects that the missingmaps.org help us with. So you can pick one and start mapping. That's what we do. We identify an hour. Many teams in Microsoft run this. And you can also reach, if you are interested in talking to them or figuring out where we are working, what's going on, you can just email us at missingmaps@microsoft.com. So those are all the fun things that we are doing. One other big thing, I think the question was how we are using OSM. So we're using OSM in so many ways, but another thing that we're doing right now is the entire stack of information that's coming outside of like traffic information and base map data is what I'm talking about here. Not imagery, is actually coming from OSM in Australia now. So we are flighting. So if you go to bing.com/maps, you will actually, there's a 80% chance you will hit the flight. So it's in flight mode. If you go down to Australia, you will see, just search for Adelaide or any place like that in Australia, and you will find, or Melbourne, sure. But Melbourne is usually going to be Florida first. Yeah, so if you go down there, you will see that we're using OSM data in the map. Just zoom out and scroll to, yeah. So look, it's, yeah, so that information is coming from OSM data. By the end of next week, we'll actually be 100%. So no other data provider. The entire Bing's needs will be served for base map data using OSM. So it's really interesting to see where open data is going. Talking a little bit about, since this is a career panel, I want to say I've had personally a very interesting run up to this position, which is fun. And I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, you know, and then got my business degrees, but came into a small startup in Herndon, Virginia, doing network optimizations for how the fire truck and the crime police departments get routed when somebody makes a 911 call. So that's how I got into the GIS field. I see there somebody asked, is the GIS field getting tighter? I don't know what the context is. I haven't read through, but no, GIS, I feel like GIS field is not getting tighter. It is becoming part of every day so much at this point that we don't even realize there's GIS. My phone tells me if I have a meeting, like if I'm having coffee with Chad in Starbucks, 20 minutes from here, it pops up and says, leave now, else you'll be late. And sorry, Chad, even with that, I've made you wait. So yeah, so it's been an interesting ride. GIS is going to be, yeah, GIS is going to be super awesome. I think all of you folks who are interested must continue and network with people in this field. Thanks, Matt. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Harsh. Appreciate it. Marc, over to you.
Thanks. Can you hear me? I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm Marc. I'm an engineer at DevSeed. I've been there for 6 years now. And we're an international tech consultancy that gathers researchers and engineers, and we build tools with a focus on map and earth data. And OSM is a core part of our DNA. So in this short presentation, I want to talk about how we use OSM, but also broaden your sense of OSM, that it's not just the data, it's an ecosystem of tools, and it's also a community, as Mikel and Harsh were saying. So OSM is a science in that it's a growing knowledge base and a community based on observable data. And it touches a lot of research fields. We work with our partners to further their research by building tools for them. And we use OSM for a lot of that. So with HOD, for example, we measure map completeness. So, and they have partners that are doing malaria prevention. So they need to know if maps are accurate. Or energydata.info needs to know if populations are underserved by their electricity grid. So we check OSM for that first. And if it doesn't have high voltage grids, we fill that out. With POI information, with road data and population data, we can measure if the road network is accessible enough so that population in an area can get to critical services. And I don't know if people touched on this, that AI is it's a hot topic in OSM that, and for example, Microsoft adding so many buildings to OSM. OSM itself is used as a ground truth for AI algorithms to figure out if they're doing their job at predicting buildings. So OSM is used in all these research fields, but sometimes the data is just not enough. That's why Development Seed invests in building tools to add data to make the data better. For example, Observe is an open source mobile app that we built, and it's used, for example, by Oceana to do surveys on the ground of whether restaurants are using plastic or not, and then uploads that data back into OpenStreetMap as metadata. Or we built OSM Seed, where we packaged all of OSM. So OSM is not just data, it's all the software that allows you to add data to OpenStreetMap. So we packaged OSM into this thing called OSM Seed for data that doesn't necessarily need to be an OSM, such as historical data. And now it powers Open Historical Map. And we also use OSM Seed for training, so you can implement Seed. And when AI is adding all these buildings to OpenStreetMap, one area of study that Development Seed is interested in is improving mapper workflows. So ML Enabler is a tool that we built with HOT, where we can assess the difficulty of a task and add it as a layer in the task manager. So we build all these tools with the community in mind. And Mikel touched on this a little bit, and that this is a community with a lot of passionate people, a lot of different backgrounds. It's sort of chaotic. So OSM Teams is a tool that we built to, as a light social network, maybe, to get teams of mappers to designate an area of responsibility. And maybe you can find yourself on OSM Teams. And Harsh also showed missing maps. We built the original version of missing maps, and which is called Scoreboard in its current form, where what we're trying to do is try to work on fixing the community, improving the community by giving goals and badges and rewards to mappers to turn them from beginners to power mappers, and that we have more validators in the community. And Development Seed itself has a lot of passionate mappers, and our expert data team ensures that even with all this AI, there's always a human in the loop checking and validating and training other mappers. So at DevSeed, we use OSM in different ways. We use OSM as data, we build tools, and we try to improve the community itself. And if you're interested in any of those streams, you can always reach out to me personally, or you could check out our projects at developmentseed.org.
Great. Thank you very much, Marc. All right, Steph, over to you.
All right, I'm gonna share my slides. All right, everyone can see that? Great. Perfect. All right, thank you. And hi, everyone. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk a little bit about Azavea today. Azavea is a small firm based in Philadelphia that's been building geospatial software for over 30 years. We are a certified B Corporation, which means, among many other things, we're mission driven. So we focus exclusively on projects that are related to civic, social, and environmental issues. That includes resource management, transportation, elections, among other things. But ultimately, we're trying to use geospatial technology for good. We offer services to help other organizations build software or data analysis tools, but we also have a few of our own products. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just give an example. Cicero is a comprehensive database of elected officials and legislative districts that lets people match constituents with representatives based on address level data. It's used to support things like citizen engagement and advocacy in the US, as well as several other countries around the world. And let's see, Groundwork is an annotation tool designed for geospatial data, including satellite, aerial, and drone imagery. We work with a wide range of clients in different industries, from local municipalities like Philadelphia to international NGOs like World Resources Institute, as well as universities and health and human services and national nonprofits. This is our team, which includes people from a number of different backgrounds, so software engineers, designers, GIS analysts, and project managers like myself. I joined Azavea about 1.5 years ago after having spent a number of years working at a community development corporation in Philadelphia, where I helped to build affordable housing as part of a broader revitalization effort that focused on 5 particular neighborhoods. So I'm pretty new to the industry, but as a project manager on applications related to things like wildfire risk or assessing stormwater systems, I'm still approaching problems with the same lens of geography that's used with place-based initiatives like neighborhood revitalization. So now I get to apply my project management skills I learned in real estate development to managing software development projects, which translated surprisingly well. And also, I guess, for people who are starting out in their career, knowing that the trajectory or the lines that you follow aren't necessarily planned out, and there's always different opportunities and doors that you can walk through. All right, so Azavea and OSM. So yeah,
OSM is relatively new to me, being new to the industry, but not so much for Azavea. We have a long history of working with OSM, and it's one of our go-to resources for projects. We also hold monthly hot lunches where my colleagues volunteer their lunch breaks to work on tasks for humanitarian OSM team. And all of this is right in line with Azavea's kind of general support for open source and knowledge sharing that makes it easier for others to build on. So I'll just touch on a couple projects that are examples of how we use OSM. One being Go Philly Go, which is an application that we built for the Clean Air Council. It's an environmental organization that focuses on sustainability and public health in the Philadelphia area. The app uses OpenStreetMap and OpenTripPlanner to give step-by-step trip routes that combine walking, biking, and transit options for the Philadelphia area. It's meant to encourage more sustainable transportation options by making it easier to plan out trips that don't involve personal vehicles. And then the next one I'll mention is Driver. So Driver is an open source platform that we built in partnership with the World Bank with the goal to mitigate road crashes by making it easier to record, access, and analyze crash and injury data. It uses OSM to do things like aggregate crash incidents over particular segments of road to identify areas that are perhaps more prone to crashes. Driver's also built to be used all over the world. So with OSM's coverage, that makes it a lot easier to work with. If you are interested more about Azavea, you can visit our website. We recently just brought on a couple of new hires, so we don't have any open. Visit careers.azavea.com. You can sign up for job alerts for new openings and our periodic fellowship programs. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Steph. And before we move on to our last panelist, I just want to thank all the panelists who are currently answering questions in the chat. It's really helpful to keep sort of the conversation going while we go through everyone, so I appreciate that. So over to our last panelist before we get to a couple questions. I know we are sort of getting close to the end of the time we have allotted here, but I'm going to give it over to Chad Blevins, who is going to stay within his 5 to 7 minute time.
Thanks for the reminder, Matt. I really love that mustache. I can't get over it. Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Blevins. I'm a geographer. Since this is a career panel, I will tell you quickly how I became a geographer. It was basically a failed computer science major, right? So I was entering my junior year in college. I had to pick a major. I took some computer science courses that just weren't working for me. And so I went to the counselor. I said, hey, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. Help me, help me. And they, had a printout of all the courses I had taken and what they translate to major-wise. This is a true story. And I was like, wow, I'm not going to lose any credits if I become a geographer. So that's what I'm going to do. Lo and behold, this was a long, long time ago. I was placing some bets that the field of geography would grow. I had never imagined it would grow like it has up until this point. This was back around the turn of the century. Harsh was out there in Sterling trying to figure out how to launch a satellite into space using, like a jazz drive on his computer, and just, the technology wasn't quite there. But I mean, consider yourselves lucky, I would say, that if you are interested in joining or pursuing a career in geography, I think this is the best time in the mankind, our existence, to actually jump into that field. You have geography is embedded in everything, and every aspect of our lives. You want to find a restaurant to go to, you want to purchase some real estate, whatever it is that you want to do, the answer is basically at your fingertips, right? More often than not, some abstract of geographic data that's been computed and put into a little pretty display on your map that tells you how late you're going to be to your coffee date, which I have met one person in real life since this whole COVID thing happened, and that was actually harsh. We met for coffee, standing apart. So that's how I became a geographer. And getting into, where I am now with Critigen, I spent some time bouncing around the DC area, working for a lot of government agencies as a contractor, right? I know a lot of you, if you are looking to go that route, you might see like, oh, I don't have a clearance, or I might not be totally qualified for this job, or, whatever the excuse is, throw it out the window and just apply for that job, because, it's more about, getting yourself in that position and then proving what you can do, rather than, worrying about the lack of experience you have. We all know that all people graduating college have no experience really, unless you've done some side projects or get an internship. But you got to start somewhere. So don't be discouraged by that. I guess, Matt, if you could share those slides that I sent you, that would be great. So I currently, earlier this year, I left the USAID, where I was working for the GeoCenter, and I joined a private company called Critigen. So, up until this point, I've been mainly focused, more on the technical and programmatic side of GIS and geography. But now I've, taken a step over, and I'm working more on the business side, coming up with strategic visions for the company and looking for ways that we can invest in what we already do to, increase business, or look for new opportunities or business streams that are out there just waiting to be discovered. So I work on a small team within Critigen called the Open Data and Development Team. You can go back. That's okay. That's okay. Critigen was spun off from an engineering firm, so a lot of our main work is kind of on that engineering focus. But there was a previous company called Spatial Development that was acquired by Critigen in 2017. And Spatial Development, if some of you have probably heard of them, they were, a geospatial technology company that focused on working in that third sector space, or, nonprofits in the US and abroad, or, private foundations in the US, or some of those traditional donors, international donors like USAID and World Bank and such. So when Spatial Development was acquired by Critigen, that company became the Open Data in Development business unit. Next slide, please. But Critigen as a whole, as I said, spun off of CH2M Hill back in 2019. We're composed of about 150 people. We do have an outfit in the UK, and a lot of the OD&D, Open Data and Development clients are listed right here. But we also, the other side of the house that's focused more on the utility and in industry side, they do a lot of work with, big outfits like the National Grid, which is, the power company up in the Northeast. We do some work for the DoD. As I said, we have a team in the UK that does similar style. They have a similar style portfolio than we have here. Next slide, please. So in the OpenStreetMap ecosystem, I just pulled a couple small project examples here to explain, but we do and have done quite a bit of work, and this dates back to the early spatial development days. But yeah, we use OSM data increasingly more and more so as it's becoming more reliable and there's more global coverage. But these are just two examples on the left here. We were working with a Dutch juice company, believe it or not. This is kind of an abstract example. That's why I like it. To figure out where would be, we were evaluating the potential orange juice supply chain in Tanzania's Tanga region, right? We digitized hundreds of thousands of miles of roads and, put together a little analysis for them to show where some of the better spots would be to grow oranges. You forget that the Dutch don't have, the sunny state of Florida just a short drive away. And we've also, the example on the right here showed this was in sub-Saharan Africa. And we've also done some of this work in Southeast Asia that is focused on expanding finance to access to financial and healthcare services in particular areas, using travel time isochrones. So, not the standard Euclidean distance that you see on the other map, but, what does it actually take to go through some of these places? So you need, in order to do analyses like these, you need very, very high quality data, right? And there's different ways you can go about doing that. You can pay a third-party provider who has, curated all the roads data, and they make sure that there's no, one-way streets that shouldn't be, or the, no left-hand turn or right-hand turn wherever in the world you are. And next slide, Matt, please. So a little side project that our team is working on and continuing to pursue is increasing and ranking the quality of OSM data for a particular city, municipality, or even countrywide. So what we've done is we've run these checks on 114 US cities, which happen to be cities where people within the company of Critigen live. And what these reports do, if you go to osmquality.io, you can read more about the project there. But we're going through right now, mainly focusing on roads and buildings and just tagging any errors that we see that would be there, and then giving that area a particular ranking of how high of quality data they have. If this doesn't, look at completeness, because that's often a big topic when it comes to open source data. Hey, how complete is our data? Maybe we're missing a whole neighborhood over here. There are other ways to derive those
Chad,
types
you're
of
at
metrics.
9 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun.
You could have flagged me at 7.
What?
But anyway, check out OSM Quality. You can follow us on Twitter. There's my handle too, at GeoCenter. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. We are going to have just a few minutes for some questions here. I know this is sort of the last session of the day, and I know people will have to start dropping off. This is being recorded, and I'm sure Tom and Rachel have a way to share that out with folks who are attending if you do need to drop off. So I am going to ask, I'm trying to synthesize sort of this whole panel down to like one question to ask everyone in 30 seconds or less. And while this is a large panel, I think it goes to show the diversity of the GIS and OpenStreetMap more specifically field, and how companies are getting involved, how people are using the data, how people are incorporating the data into their pipelines, or using imagery to help build out a map, or create data, or then provide those services using OpenStreetMap data as well as other data to provide services to different customers. So there's a whole broad world of GIS that's out there. And so I think the one question that I would like each panelist to answer, in your eyes, now that the world, I get to use the cliche that everyone's using, the world has changed, right? We're in a very different world than we were 8 months ago with the global pandemic. Where do you see, let me rephrase, what are you looking for in the GIS field that may change moving forward, and how do you feel that your company or your organization is sort of handling that? Does the GIS field change after COVID? Are things staying the same, or we're just all looking at Zoom meetings for the foreseeable future? A very broad question. We'll go down the line of in the order that we presented in, and I would say, since it is a very vague question, I'll give you a minute each to respond before we start answering some questions from the crowd. So Mikel, starting with you.
Well, one thing which has changed massively in ways I wouldn't have predicted during the COVID response is the use of mobile phone geographic exhaust data that we all share. There was a lot of 1 year ago there was a really interesting investigative piece by the New York Times looking at data that they bought on the market of location data. They were able to identify members of the Secret Service and all sorts of other crazy stuff. Look it up if you can. 3 more months later, like this genie was completely out of the bottle in terms of how we were using and location data to track the impact and the progression and project forward how movement and COVID incidence was connected. So I think there's a lot of interesting and big questions about to look into. Yeah.
Thank you. Dana.
So I guess I heard your question kind of in the context of business operations. I remember like when I got my first iPhone and somebody tried to FaceTime me and I thought, I don't need to see you to talk to you. Well, here we are now. That's how we operate. And I think that's created challenges, if you're used to being in an office and working with people, that may have created challenges, but I think it's also broken down some barriers from, reaching across office sites where, it's Matt, you and I work in different locations, but now this form of communication seems very normal to us. So I think in some ways it's broken down barriers across companies and across communities like this.
Great, thank you very much. Who's next? James.
Yeah, I'll just share a quick anecdote then from when we all started going remote around the March timeframe. I still keep in touch with a lot of my previous instructors up at West Point, and they're a customer as well, so we do engagements there. And as the academy looked to send all the cadets home for spring break and then an extended leave, the superintendent there wanted a map of where are all his cadets, and that's something that they should have had a long time ago, or should have had the ability to do, but they didn't, and it wasn't as important. But it really highlighted the need for spatial awareness in kind of all aspects of how they do business. And interestingly enough, the academy turned to the academic GIS department to help solve that issue. And we're seeing that kind of with all our customers where, they've always had a GIS department that, is kind of maybe in their own corner or their own world. And then I think COVID's really kind of shined a spotlight on that department. And you're seeing, directors and higher level people in organizations be more interested in spatial awareness.
Great, thank you. Jesse.
It's a really interesting question that you're asking because just so much COVID has had just such a huge impact on everything, right? It's brought so many of our processes online, has taken away a lot of the physical face-to-face. And to that end, from our standpoint, we haven't had to pivot very much, considering that we were IncaTech was 100% in the cloud, and we had all our collaboration tools and things already kind of in place. But it did affect a lot of our technical solutioning, given that we do serve a number of different customers that are on classified domains, and that type of work has to physically be done within certain places. And so we've gotten creative in developing different processes for churning out solutions from sort of the open commercial side, and being able to produce artifacts that can then go into the classified domain. Additionally, we do a strong consideration of building security into everything that we do, just considering that everything is online now, cybersecurity, data security. There's a number of different really cool methodology.
Gonna cut you off there.
Okay.
Thanks, Jesse. All right, Harsh.
Yeah, no, I think everybody has made all the good points. I just want to say that it was really interesting. What started as a really interesting, almost a project with Bing.com/COVID to kind of visually see where the pandemic is spreading and what's going on, to that becoming one of the things where you can look for the hotlines, the protocols, the latest news in the regions. To say the least, I think if there was any doubt that GIS is not important or geospatial is a very niche area, there you go. It's just everywhere. Everybody needs, I mean, even with OSM, recently one of my guys was involved in mapping hospitals in Ireland because that's where he was from, and they were helping map hospitals that would take COVID patients, which is really another, very interesting stuff. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Harsh. Marc.
Yeah, at Development Seed, as Mikel was saying, it's interesting to look at all this mobility data and find interesting ways of visualizing it and trying to make sense of the pandemic. So that's some stuff that we've been experimenting with. We need better ways of understanding our current situation. Yeah, and that's mostly in terms of GIS, is trying to figure out how to tell a story about what led us here and how are we going to get out of this. So Development Seed has a few projects where we're working on telling that story. So keep an eye on our blog for that.
Great. Thank you, Marc. Steph?
Yeah, I echo a lot of other people's statements already, but I guess one thing that is kind of interesting and the pandemic has kind of revealed is just the logistics of distributing resources that maybe are concentrated in certain areas and were needed in others. So whether it's like ventilators having to go to hospitals that need them, where there's oversupply in other areas, or even just a project that we worked on with Vanguard Trust of helping donors see where their funds would be most effectively used in dealing with issues related to COVID. So yeah, just looking at a global pandemic and seeing how to redistribute resources in order to deal with it.
Great. Chad, anything else to add? You're muted.
If I can remember your question after hearing 7 other answers in front of me, but privacy, I think, is a huge one, right? As far as where's the industry going to go? Like, I want to know if I'm in the same grocery store as someone who had COVID, but, do I really want to know, people to know where I was, type of thing, and I think there's a lot of instances like that are going to play out in the next year or two. As geographers, right, location is important. So for all you aspiring students looking for jobs, don't move to Jackson Hole, and expect to find a GIS job that's based in DC. I just don't think at this point in time that would be the best move. But, it is still important, although we're all remote. We hopefully one day will not be like this. And although some of this will probably stick, I don't think it's all going to be permanent.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And so there was one question in the chat that I know a couple of you have started answering, but I think it's a good question to sort of end our time together on, and I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. The original question was, we've all mentioned OpenStreetMap in our presentations. How important is that for job applicants to have a good knowledge of when applying for jobs? But given that this is a career panel and we have, assuming a lot of college students or recent graduates on the call, what big things are any of you, and I won't go down the line, but for anyone who wants to jump out and answer, what sort of key things are you all looking for in recent graduates who are maybe just starting out in their career and maybe don't have a lot of job experience in the GIS field? What are you looking for when you're hiring some entry-level folks? That's open to anyone on the panel.
Yeah, so I can start, Matt. I think participating in OSM and being familiar with it, working in campaigns or associated mapathons, it's a great way to add skill and grow your network. But our team focuses a lot on foundation GeoInt data for government customers. And so the more you work in that world and the more you participate, you learn how to identify features on imagery, which is key for what we're doing. So the more you do that, the more successful you'll be at capturing those features on a vector map, or being able to contribute to the tools and algorithms that we're building that assist the mapper in capturing those things. So being able to reference experience doing that is really useful for us, for a candidate.
And I want to double down on what Dana said real quick and say, doing a small project, going in, just maybe mapping out your own community, doing trying out an algorithm that was put out by team, Corporation X, and going through their open data pages and seeing what they're working on. And you get involved in the community, reach out to the network, ask the questions. Everyone's on Twitter or some social channel, reach out on LinkedIn, ask those questions, set up an interview, and don't walk in like, yeah, sure, it's an open data, so I'll learn and get something. Just come in with a little bit of experience, do a project. If you don't find one to do it at your own school with your friends or a corporation, just find one, do it yourself, go to the details, and that's a big conversation starter. I'm always interested in talking more to a candidate who has done something and shown like, yes, I can do this, and I'm a self-starter, self-learner. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I can add to that, saying you don't necessarily need to it's good to be a self-starter and self-learner. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to have succeeded in producing something, but I'm really looking for something for evidence of like the passion that brought you to the field in the first place. What are the things that you really care about, and have you taken opportunities to get involved where you've seen them? There's plenty of, anything that you care about, you can find some. You really care about mapping about railways, you can map the heck out of railways in OpenStreetMap. If there's a topic if you care about conservation, there's lots of interesting things you can do in OpenStreetMap or in other things as well. So that's what I may be a little bit unusual in that I lead the social impact team in MapBox, and we're not as technical oriented, but I think that's something we look at MapBox as people who really have a passion and are ready to bring that passion to whatever challenges they meet on the job.
I wanted to add something to that, which is just that we answered a question earlier about how to learn to code, and this idea of passion is very important in not only showing to a potential employer, but also to learn a new skill like coding, where even if you go through a code academy and learn coding on paper, if you don't do a particular passion project or a small project, or take the railways that you mapped on OpenStreetMap and visualize them on a web map in some way, you'll never truly learn coding the proper way. So when you want to learn coding, you have to bring passion to it as well.
If I may, I'd like to kind of piggyback on a number of different points that have been said. From our standpoint at IncaTech, knowledge, skills, and abilities, those are great for people to have, but they're not the checklist that we're really looking at. It's the attitudes and behaviors. It's the makeup of people that, if you can show to me, demonstrate that you have immersed yourself in this project and talked about it in depth, that's really what starts to resonate with me. And with OpenStreetMap, it's always one of those great options as a starting place for any kind of geospatial project. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be OpenStreetMap, but it's more of, hey, are you somebody that really wants to come to work and is passionate about technologies and solving problems with technologies?
Great. A lot of great answers there. Since we are coming up to the top of the hour, I'm going to end the panel there, but I would like everyone on the panel, if you can, to please, if you had a contact that you were willing to share with the attendees, either a jobs page or email or contact us page that you'd be willing to share with everyone. I'd really appreciate it if you could post it in the chat, so that way people can reach out to you. Thank you to everyone on the panel. I know everyone only got sort of a few minutes to talk, but I think it really showed off the breadth of GIS and a lot of sort of the current OSM type work that's going on out there. So thank you to everyone who called in. Thank you to Tom and to Rachel for on behalf of MapGive for setting up these panels. And yeah, thank you, everyone. If you're in the US, have a great Thanksgiving. If you're elsewhere, have a great week. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Is that a real mustache, or can you just kind of pull it off?